Thank you very much for listening to this week's talk on the Sedra of Vaera. And we're dedicating our learning to the safe and speedy release of the last remaining hostage in Gaza, Ran Gvili, and to the safety and success of all of the soldiers in the IDF as they continue their heroic mission to protect the people and the land of Israel. And as we look at this week's Sedra and we read of the miracles that define our becoming a nation, and we feel we can see on so many levels that these epic miracles that we read about in the Torah, Hashem is performing them for us on an ongoing basis. And especially in the few years, we have seen open miracles. There are probably an infinite number that we have that we're not aware of. But everything that we're reading in the Torah is the living, breathing story of our people. And just thinking in terms of how Hashem loves us, how do I love you? Let me count the ways. I think that we have two ways of counting in this week's Sedra that show us how much Hashem loves us. And that will enable us to reciprocate that love and be worthy of the redemption, of the future redemption. The first way is in verse 6, chapter 6 of Shemos, when Hashem is talking to Moshe and he is outlining what we often refer to as the four expressions of redemption. And we read, Lochein emor livnei Yisrael, therefore say to the children of Israel, Ani Hashem, I am Hashem, v'hotzesi eschem mitachas sivlos Mitzrayim, and I will take you out from under the burdens of Egypt, v'hitzalti eschem, and I will save you me'avodosom, from their labor, v'ga'alti eschem, and I will redeem you, bizroa natuya, with an outstretched arm, uvishvatim gedolim, and with great judgments, v'lokachti eschem li la'am, and I will take you to me as a people. And these four expressions, v'hotzesi, v'hitzalti, v'ga'alti, v'lokachti, we say them at the Seder table, and we often think of them as four expressions of redemption, which insinuate that it is just four ways, four perhaps different perspectives on one concept of redemption. But according to the Talmud in Yerushalmi, we are actually speaking about four separate redemptions. And I think that when we look at this greater number, then this is enabling us to, with that lens of seeing all the detail, of appreciating all the detail, to really understand the focus of Hashem and the investment that Hashem is making in order to take us out of Egypt. And we have a similar way of thinking possibly about the 10 plagues, because if Hashem wanted to bring Egypt to its knees, he could have just organized something catastrophic to happen to Paro, and then the empire would have crumbled without the leader that was charging the enterprise and making sure that the Jewish people were being enslaved and brutalized in this way. And we see in the Torah on a number of occasions when the plagues are decimating the Egyptian people and the Egyptian economy, and Paro's servants turn to him and say, stop, enough already, can't you see what you're doing? And yet Paro stubbornly clings to his ego, to his dogma, and if you get the impression that if Paro would have been removed, then the people would have accepted that the Jewish people need to go, and they would have let that happen. But instead we have this process of 10 plagues, 7 in this week's Sedra of Vaera. And why do we have that? And the Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch suggests that in this detail, in every single measure for measure way in which the evil of Egypt, although led by Paro with the cooperation of the people most of the time, this was something that at each stage the Jewish people's self-esteem, which had been so damaged during the hundreds, 210 years of slavery, of generations, people who had been born into slavery, whose children were going to be born into slavery, and such a dejected state of being. With this whole process, the fact that it didn't just happen in one flash of lightning, that Egypt is destroyed and the Jewish people walk free, but in this way, not in an arrogant, vengeful way, but in a way that was actually part of the healing of the physical aspect of the slavery, and also the psychological aspect, the psychological and the spiritual, because the psychology of being a slave, of having no feeling of self-worth, that is something that is so understandable. And spiritually as well, being in an environment of tumah, of impurity, that the idol worship and the immorality that Egypt is notorious for, this had an effect on the Jewish spiritual, the spiritual level of the Jewish people. And the rabbis tell us that the Jewish people were on the 49th level of impurity, and one more notch and they would have been irredeemable. So all of that had its impact, and the calibration of these 10 plagues and redressing at every stage all the aspect of the damage that had accrued to the Jewish people at the hands of the Egyptians. And there is a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos in chapter 5, Mishnah 1, that questions why does the world have to be created with 10 utterances? And we see in the process in the Sedra of Bereshis that there are 10 times that we can identify that Hashem said, let a certain thing be created, and it was created. And this was how creation occurred. And the Mishnah asks the question, Hashem could have just created everything with just one utterance or one thought. And yet instead you have this much more intricate, detailed description of the process of creation. And the Mishnah suggests that it is to reward the righteous who uphold creation, which was created with these 10 utterances, and to punish the evil people who destroy the world that was created with these 10 utterances. And I think that we can see this process of healing on the one hand, and of uh, the consequence that accrues to those who destroy it on the other hand. We can see this process in the fact that these 10 plagues happen. And really this is a very powerful way that the Jewish people can heal physically and psychologically and spiritually. And if we can find proof in the same word that is written in subtly different ways in these two Pesukim of chapter 6, verse 6 and 7, when we read, V'hotzesi eschem mitachas sivlos Mitzrayim, and I will take you out from under the burdens of Egypt. Now the word sivlos, which means burdens, is written without a vav. Yet if we look in the following posuk, in posuk 7, we read, Ani Hashem Elohechem hamotzi eschem mitachas sivlos Mitzrayim. I am Hashem, your God, who is taking you out. And note the present tense. This is something that we are experiencing continually. From under mitachas sivlos Mitzrayim, from under the burdens of Egypt. In this verse, the word sivlos is written with a Vov. And when we have a word that's written without a Vov, that is often representative of the single number. And in the first instance, when Hashem redeems the Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, they are at such a low point and they have been enslaved for so many years. Physically, they are weak and they are not able to go beyond that physical level. So at that point, there is the rescue, there is the redemption from the physical slavery. However, there is a process, and we are able, whether it is with hindsight or just at the end of that process that the Bnei Israel at the time could actually experience it themselves, that they realized that they were being redeemed from two types of slavery. They were being redeemed from the physical slavery and also from that spiritual slavery. And so from the way these words are written, we get that message as well. And as we're learning these lessons, as we are seeing the miracles that are occurring in our day of an epic nature, as we read through the words of the Torah and the story of the Exodus from Egypt, that is something that has captured people all over the world of all different different religions, and this is something that has enthralled ever humans since the Torah has been given to us. And we are able to see in our time these miracles of such an epic nature, and we're able to appreciate our release from spiritual slavery as well as our release from physical slavery. And please God, we should merit to see this process, the continuation of this process, the miracles that we acknowledge, the love that we know that Hashem is showing us by all of the different ways that we see how we are redeemed, that we see how those who oppress us are recompensed in a perfect measure. And please God, we should be able to see the full and final redemption speedily in our days. Thank you very much for listening, and wishing everybody Shabbat Shalom.